Well, I'm often asked, how do you write a book? How do you go about it? And it's a very interesting question. In fact, it's a very difficult one to answer because, of course, there are so many different types of books. There are millions of different types. But for business books and for my purposes, here are some thoughts, in no particular order, about what you might wish to do to write a decent book. So first of all, I would choose an accurate and engaging title. Something that genuinely explains what this thing's about, and something which captures people's imagination. Now, you want something really distinctive in order to do that. And of course, if you put into a search engine certain words and phrases, you'll find that they all come up the same. And you'll probably find there's thousands of books with exactly the same title. And most books don't sell very well, to be honest with you. And one of the reasons, I think, is that they don't have interesting titles. I mean, the titles are too boring, they're too derivative, they're not inspiring, and so on. So that's idea number one, if you like. Give it something provocative and interesting. Next up, I would get to grips with a word count. Now, people get quite confused about how many words are in a book. Most books that you see on a shelf, businessy type books, are 50 to 70,000 words. Some of the big ones with fat spines are 100,000 words. And when you're up into 300 or 400 pages, it's got to be a pretty specific thing for people to want to read it. So I would say get that word count right down to something like 40,000 maximum. But really, 20,000? Or if you can say it in 10,000 or less, then do precisely that. Because the shorter it is, the better it is. So some of the most successful books really have been at the sort of 5,000 and 6,000 word mark. So get that word count organised first so that you know what you're shooting for. And really, if something's about 100, 120 pages long, that's about as much as most people really want to tolerate. So keep that down to a minimum and don't waffle on. Next thought when it comes to writing a book is choose a structure before you start writing. It takes real discipline. You're going to want something like a maximum of 10 sections, maybe 5 sections as a minimum, because if you haven't got 5 sections, you probably haven't got a book. You probably want to make 40 or 50 points. You might want to make 100 if they're very short and pithy, but one way or another, get that organised and into sections so that you know what your structure is before you start writing. Now, one of my favourite mantras is brevity equals intelligence. Honestly, readers will really thank you for making this thing shorter. You've got to make it short. Now, as a result of that, I would say that you should choose a word count and structure for each point that you want to make. Now, here's an example formula that's particularly relevant if you want to use visuals, is choose a visual provocation of some kind, an illustration if you like, and then think of anything up to 5 or 6 bullet points explaining how that thing works or what the point is around the topic. And then you may wish to throw in at the end an exercise or some sort of practical application or example to bring to life the thing that you're suggesting. Now, if you're using visuals, I recommend that you do not write a stream of consciousness and then decide to throw some pictures or illustrations in as an afterthought. I would plan the interplay between the two so that it's quite clear that this image here, or this visual, or this graph or diagram is directly linked to the thing that you're about to say, or vice versa. But don't just do stream of consciousness and then lob in a few visual things to break it up, because really that's not going to be a well-planned book. So those are some thoughts on how you might set about organising a book.